Yeah. No Evie. Hey, Dan. All right. I'm going to go over by the Christmas tree. You're up. Over there. Well, you're up as in you have to move now. I'm going to have to introduce you, and I can't do it when you're over here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Dave's walking in now. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. How many people have not been to one of these events before? A few. Okay, good. Yeah, sure, Josh. All right. So it's usually the last time we had this, there was 100 and there were a lot of people here. There were a lot of people. So we weren't really sure, especially because of the whole thing with the mandates and everything. So we weren't really sure what was going to happen. So there you go. Everybody hopefully got a lot of food, and there it is. We're going to talk. If you have not been here before, it's not going to make any difference. You're not going to notice anything different because this is all new. But for those that have been here before, we usually have a safety panel that was actually 2 months ago. Usually it's in January, and we usually get all of the air traffic control facilities in San Diego. So what I thought would be good was to have a maintenance panel, because we always get some interesting maintenance calls. We get interesting maintenance squawks, and we're going to try to hopefully educate people, and that's why these fine gentlemen are here, who I'll introduce here in just a second. They are actually mechanics. I know they don't look like it, but I can assure you they are. I'm not sure about this one, though. So anyway, we're going to start out with just a few updates. I don't know if Dave has any club updates because he disappeared again. But just to give everyone some updates from my side, the biggest thing that we're seeing right now, and I imagine that probably a lot of you have received emails, is noise complaints. There are a lot of noise complaints coming. Right now, mainly from Alpine. So all of these, so everything now is going into they're going into safety concern reports on the website, so we can track all this stuff. I will say that 99% of these reports that we get are not violations at all. Nobody's below any 91, 119 altitudes or anything. It's nothing to do with that. It's we're gathering data, and then if you are the pilot that's flying or the instructor that's flying, you're going to get a form letter, and the form letter says whatever it says, basically that someone reported a safety concern. If it's a noise complaint, then it's got a link to the November newsletter, which I think has overlays of noise-sensitive areas, and then that's it. You don't need to respond. If you want to respond, you can, but within 24 hours, it just gets closed out. So we're using that to track so that if, God forbid, someone decides to file a lawsuit, that we can say, look, we have done everything we can, and you guys did nothing wrong. Like I said, for the most part, that's the case. So that's what's happening, especially in Alpine. What we're seeing a lot of with the Alpine stuff is just basically turns around a point, ground reference type stuff over the same area or over houses. So I would highly recommend not doing that. There's a lot of places all over the east. If you go past Alpine, there's a lot of places that you can go to do ground reference maneuvers. At this point, I think there's no safe space. I mean, unless there's nothing below you, everybody is going to report something. I mean, that's just the way it is. There are highly, highly sensitive noise areas like Descanso for one. Alpine now is another. The one over around the coast, I haven't seen a lot of those reports. But just to give you an idea, I think last week alone we had 14 reports. Okay, so it's nonstop. I mean, most of them come into the website now. There are a handful that go directly to Dave. On occasion, some come directly to me. They all end up in the system, but the bottom line is there's a ton and a ton and a ton of reports and people reporting this stuff. And now with ADSB, they got your tail number, they got your altitudes, and that's that. Okay. Are there any questions on the noise stuff? It's a really big, sensitive topic, and we're just trying to prevent the club from being sued or you guys from being called in for something. You can turn your microphone on if you want and say something almighty. Press the button again. Yeah, there you go. Oh, okay. Well, it was working before you got your hands on it, so hold on. I'm going to try this one. You can't give them anything.
I got fired.
That's why we can't have good things, nice things.
I got fired.
Works fine for me. Okay, go ahead.
What'd you do?
I turned it on.
It was on. The little green thingy was on.
Oh, that's fine. I understand.
Green light.
Yeah.
Hi, I fly airplanes. Anyways. You want to come on up? Anyways. What's going on? Anything to add? God, I'm trying to think about it. Oh, yes. There was a lot of moaning with the departure of 901 Tango, our beloved decathlon, or Satabria, I'm sorry. But they said it was just too much on it, and they had to let it go. And talk to him about it. Anyways, that's that plane left. We've got another Comanche coming online probably within the next, once they get the keys done on it. Should be next week. Working on another... I had another DA-40 that want to go to Palomar, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I think that's about it. It's been kind of quiet. Flying has been going through the roof, but fortunately, Shane and I are happy about it. It looks like we're going to have some more IFR weather coming, which means flying's going to come to a halt, which means the complaints are going to go to zero, which will give us a break.
What model Comanche?
250. Real nice one, too. I think that's all I got. Yeah, finally came online. We've had it since August. We've been talking about it since then. It's supposedly on now. We can keep it in the air. Not going there. Not going there. So, for the offices you guys saw with Gibbs, I'll always call it Gibbs. We now have a roommate ATP. They have 3/4 of the building. We still have our 3 offices. So you guys, the open path stuff will still work on the rear doors. If you guys want to come in the front door, that's fine too. But you do need your open path to get in from the rear. We've been working on the Palomar office. We got new floors, new cove. All the stuff on the walls are done. We painted it. And then furniture shows up when it gets off the boats. But we'll have all new stuff similar like we did at Gibbs as well. And eventually we'll probably do some work out at Gillespie. So that's about all the fun that's been going on lately. Any questions? Going once, twice? It's all yours.
Okay, so really the only incident to talk about at the moment is actually a good segue into this. We had It's interesting how this one came
The
up.
Duchess?
Speaking about the Duchess, the Duchess, there was a flight from San Diego to Monterey, and halfway through the right engine started to falter, and then eventually it died. So pilot feathered the engine, landed at Paso Robles, beautiful. The problem with this is that they then filled back up, took off, and went to Monterey. We didn't know anything. If we didn't get a call from the FSDO, we would have had absolutely no idea that any of this even happened. We wouldn't have been involved. We wouldn't have done an investigation, and we wouldn't be talking about this. The point is that there was no phone call, not to Dave, not to myself, not to the owner, not to the mechanic, not to anybody. So the determination was made that the airplane was airworthy when we don't really know if it was, and there was nobody to offer any guidance. Luckily, everything worked out. Made it to Monterey, came back. The result of the investigation was likely carb ice, but that part's irrelevant. The point is that there were no phone calls. So it's very important, okay? And just to go through, there's some confusion as to what the process is for reporting a squawk. I actually had a call a few days ago when we were up at Palomar with some bad information. Okay, neither one of us will tell anybody not to report a squawk. Okay, we will also not tell anybody not to put a squawk in Schedule Master. What we will tell you is that the way the ops rules are written is you make a call to the owner and let them know what's going on. And then whatever that conversation is that you have with them, hopefully you come up with a plan of action. Ideally, fast forward, you follow up and find out, what actually the problem was. If it was a magneto or something, obviously if there was like a, some of these we'll look at, but if it was a bent rudder or something like that, it's not really anything to follow up on necessarily, unless you get a call from me about something to that regard. But for the most part, if it's something mechanical that you say, wow, this is weird, I've never had this, like down on there somewhere is a magneto that completely failed. Follow up, make sure, hey, was it me, was it pilot error, or was it something mechanical? And we'll talk with these fine gentlemen here in a minute. Once you have that conversation with the owner, if you squawk that, 9 times out of 10, and I'll point it, I'll point it out especially with these guys, by the time you hang up the phone, Dave or one of these fine gentlemen are probably already on the way over if it's maintained by the aeromechanic shop to fix it. So does that mean don't report it in Schedule Master? No, not necessarily. That is up to you. If you want to report it, if you want to report anything in Schedule Master, that is completely up to you. We're not going to tell you, we will not dictate what to report in Schedule Master or what to write down. Okay? That being said, we're going to go through some of these squawks here because it's really important when you're squawking, and I know there's some airline guys in here, I guarantee you that they don't write a dissertation on what they think might be the problem or why they feel they might have come to that conclusion. State the facts. Give these guys some information about what you did, if you did any troubleshooting, or as much detail as you can, and that's it. Okay, if you're going to report the squawk, all right? There's, there was a lot of. I know there's some guys out there that are also A&Ps. They don't maintain the airplanes for the most part, so don't put what you might, don't put down what you might think the problem might be. Just state the facts. Okay, that helps these guys. So, Dave, I'll pull some of these up if you want to go through them. You want me to start with the first one, or? Yeah. Okay. So some of these, see if we can figure this thing out. Some of these are okay, but I'll read this one to you, and I want someone to tell me what it means so that these guys can fix it. Okay. Passenger side comm was in and out on the mic. So somebody tell me what these guys are going to fix.
Yeah, if you're in the room, we don't mean to put you out on the carpet, but we are.
Well, don't raise your hand. Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. But if you If any of you were ever able to attend the new member briefings back in the day when we met in person, I make it a point to put these up as a discussion point of what we're trying to figure out and what this person is trying to convey to us and what message are we receiving. So let's put this scenario in your head. You're going to go fly to Catalina with your family, and you just did a dispatch on your aircraft, and you came up with this squawk. Technically, the plane's grounded. What are you going to do? And this is kind of an open forum discussion. If you want to talk, you can. The question is, what are you going to do?
It's too many.
Okay, but still, you're sitting here and getting ready to go to Catalina, and all your friends are there, and they're like, "Oh, getting ready to have a buffalo burger," and you got this. The question, I think it comes down to it: do we have a legit gripe going on to begin with?
Let me ask you this: you see this in Schedule Master? Do you take off to Catalina? No. Who says yes? Who says no? Why not? Why don't you go? Okay, so it's an Delta. Are you a lawyer? Hopefully not. So
I got the 213 Delta.
So
C.
you cannot take off with an open discrepancy. I don't care what it says. You cannot take off with an open discrepancy. What you can do, what everybody in this room can do as members, you can go in there, right, where you just saw me click it. You click it, and you type in a comment. Not required for VFR flight, whatever it is.
Could not duplicate.
There has to be, it's a one-to-one. You have a discrepancy, you have the return to service, if you will, okay? The discrepancy has to be addressed. Now, there are a lot of other factors, so not all of them are gonna fall under that. Oh yeah, the engine, it's not required for VFR flight, or whatever. So, obviously there has to be a little bit more, but just getting to a high level, that's basically, and I think that's what one of the things you were getting at is there has to be something here in order for that plane to be legal.
So what do? That's why you say you write a new comment. Could not duplicate, didn't understand the squawk, didn't know what he was talking about. When a new owner comes into the club, I write a squawk up for him to make sure the system works. And the squawk headline is, plane's always out of trim and lands hard. The funny part is, true statement, the funny part is, if you go into your resource information, go ahead and highlight it real quick.
Which one?
Resource info? Okay, go down to maintenance. Okay, so if you go down to the bottom, it says maintenance notifications. Okay, if you guys want, you can go in there and add, if you're crazy enough, you can put the fleet of aircraft in there. So anytime a squawk gets posted, you can receive it. I know for a fact there's a handful of CFIs that do that, and I know one particular CFI that made a big stink when that squawk went out. Plane's out of trim and lands hard. He wouldn't fly it.
She's another lawyer.
Yeah. Anyways, pay attention. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. I'm the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. So this is the stuff when we talk to you guys in the new member meetings, and I don't want to go off track because I want these guys to talk, but, I always, the old play on words. Please write incoherent sentences, not incoherent sentences. If you take a minute, if you're going to write something, write it up so the rest of us can understand, so that these folks who are already losing their hair already don't lose it quicker because they're trying to figure out, well, it failed on takeoff, good for VFR flight. So what do you need me for then? I don't understand. So this is the kind of stuff that we see on a regular basis. I've got some real doozies that I couldn't pull up, but
So this is an example
actually
of a good one
yeah.
that has details in it. They came up after the touch and go. They wouldn't go down when selected. No circuit breakers popped. That's it. So hopefully that'll give these guys something to start with.
So there's a little bit of stuff. So not to beat a dead horse, when you guys are writing things up, try to give us as much information as possible. Take a minute, you're typing it up. So when these guys get the information from either the owner or they go pull it up themselves, it gives them some guidance to get the thing going again. Versus like, well, fuel gauge indicate anything other than full, even when tanks are many gallons below full. Whatever, how many gallons is many gallons below full. Don't know. I mean, were you flying? Were you on the ground? Were you moving? Were you not? Was the fuel sloshing around? We don't know, because it's basically a toilet bob that goes up and down in there. So what do we have? We don't know. Which comes back to the issue that we talk about all the time, and FAA has been hammering, is knowledge of systems. If most people realize that these planes are built on 1958 technology, they wouldn't get in them. Okay. I get some of the new member briefs. Raise of hands. How many people in this room, and there should be a lot of hands raised on this one because a lot of us our age or older, have actually seen, held, and played with a carburetor? I've had new member meetings that nobody raised a hand. Yet, what is the primary fuel unit in our aircraft? There you go. They haven't put a carburetor in a car since, what, 1982? 85. Well, they had the crossfire injection in the Corvette. So, this is, it's funny. I mean, carburetors are simple, they're easy, but nobody knows about them. And so when something happened, you get the, well, it doesn't run on this mode or this mode. Do you even know what you're turning when you're adjusting the mixture control? What are you doing? What's it doing to the carburetor? Or is it doing anything to the carburetor? Where's it coming from? What's it doing? Basic stuff. So that way when you know, well, the instructor said turn the knob. Oh, the engine wants to die. Oh, shouldn't do that. Let's just run it full. And then he gets to the airport. Then the next guy goes out, and the plugs are all fouled because I'm stuff to full. And then Dave gets upset because you should have seen how gunked up those plugs were. See? Anyways, I digress. So these guys are here to answer questions on systems. They're talking about stuff they deal with, kind of like with the controllers. We're up here basically politely telling us we're idiots. So now we're doing it on the other end. So with that, I'll kick it over to.
All right. So anyway, the point is, back to what we were just talking about, is that just to make sure that when you're writing your squawks, that you're writing them with as much detail as possible. So what I'll do here is I'm going to introduce these gentlemen, and I'll let each of them, if they would like, to give us what they see the most that may be preventable. Okay? And this is certainly helpful for the owners, especially when you're writing detailed squawks, because maybe they don't have to go and troubleshoot and spend an hour of troubleshooting, and they save $100. And then if they save $100, maybe the prices will eventually go down. Probably not, but it sounds good. All right, so these gentlemen here are all with Aeromechanics. They're all with Aeromechanics at Montgomery, and they probably maintain half the fleet at Montgomery at least, and if you add the Aeromechanics at Ramona, then I would say the majority of the maintenance that's done on the club fleet is from these fine gentlemen. Alan, everybody probably knows Dave. He's been around. He's been around. Alex and Brent. And Brent's been around a while as well. So I'm going to hand this over to the boss man. So he's going to just tell, you don't have to stand up.
I want to.
Okay.
I want to.
All right.
It's an aerobics class.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Without this thing?
You have to, because people online have to hear you.
Can the people online hear me?
No.
Okay, I won't talk for too long, but I want to say some things. I've always wanted to talk to everybody and never really gotten a chance. All in one room, all at one time. People come into the hangar, and they come in and out, and they learn a little bit, or we get a little bit, we get some feedback, but we never really get to talk all the way. I always wanted to say that this club, with all of its facets, if you think about it, think about a young person coming in, never flown before. They go through that, what do you call the meeting, the thing, the new member. If you don't come out of there with your head spinning, there's a problem. How do you absorb all of that? And then we've got airline pilots, we have retired military guys, we've got people flying recreation, we've got the owners on one side, maintenance on the other side, not to mention the all-evil insurance company, right? And then we've got, every time the airplane moves, it has to be moved by some federal employee. The FAA has to tell you you can move it. And then we're overseen by the FAA for everything we do. If you put a business plan together and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and went out and looked for investors, so the fact that this thing works to me is magic. I've seen it when it was smaller, and it's gotten bigger, and it's gotten better, and many of you are responsible for that because it takes effort from everyone. I think it's amazing, and I love it. And worldwide, if you think about it, how big is it? So all these little complaints we have them, but they're little in comparison to the whole picture. So, with that in mind, how do we get cheap maintenance, good dispatch rates, good percentage of dispatch, and still be safe at the same time? If I had a flying club, and if it were me, the first thing I would tell my prospective renter is that the fleet is 45 years old on an average. That's a classic. It's approaching antique.
Hey.
So
Hey, watch that.
I can say that. I can say that. So if we think about that, if we introduce people to it that way and make them realize that what they're flying is this beautiful piece of machinery that was made 40 or 50 years ago, and if they take care of it that way, then we can all go to the beach. We don't have to do what we're doing. And I think that's really, if you want to talk about maintenance, that's the best way to get it all in line, is to let people know what they're doing. And that's probably why we brought this thing, so everybody could touch it and know that it's just tin foil. There's nothing to it. And it's magic. The people that built these things are godlike, in my opinion. I mean, think about how long they've lasted and everything. So little things that we see, I'll name a couple, and then I'll let these guys talk, or if you have a question, and you can ask a question. We see footprints or boot prints on the bottom of a Cessna door, okay? That's not a good sign. That pisses us off. We love airplanes, and we don't need to be fixing them over and over. And when we see that, that's disrespectful. So somehow, some way, the ball's being dropped somewhere, and somebody thought that was a cool thing to do. Another little item is the closing of a 172 door. If it's pre-86, you slam it and you shut the door. If it's above that, you pull it closed. The best way to do it is open the window, pull the door closed, and then lightly push the handle down. The thing sucks in. Everybody's happy. Seats. People have a tendency, I want the seat all the way up. Crank it, crank it, crank it. When you get to the top, tighten the shit out of it. Okay? Right? And the next person comes, they get in there and say, hey, Dave, what you guys just maintain this airplane? The seat won't move up and down on the track. Well, no crap. You just tighten the crap out of it. It will not slide on the tracks anymore. So these are little things. Of course, the sawed-off tires, numerous things. We like fixing airplanes. We're in business because people break them. However, the respectful part, that really bugs everybody, and it doesn't do the club any good. So I want to make sure that before I hand this over to anybody else, that everybody hears this, because I say it all the time, and I've said it too many times. Our shop, when it's open, and it's open almost 7 days a week, because I'm there on Saturday doing paperwork when these guys are enjoying themselves as they should. That door, when it's open, 8:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening, is open for anybody and everybody that wants to come in there. They can come in, they can mosey around, they can ask questions, they can touch things, they can ask anybody they want any questions. All of my guys have been taught and trained to answer questions discreetly without embarrassing anybody with that macho, I'm so cool, I'm a mechanic attitude, because we really don't know anything either. We have to go look it up and find the instructions and repair the airplanes as accordingly. So if you want to come in, if you want to bring your students, if you want to bring yourself, you bring anybody you want in there, you can mosey around, especially instructors and students. Come in, talk to your student. No one will interrupt you, because the bond between you and your student is extremely important. We understand that. So you don't need some mechanic interjecting, no, it's not that, it's that thing, you idiot. That's not going to happen. If you have questions while you're in there and you're with a student or with a group of people, feel free to ask. Anybody here would love to help you. And Brent is an expert on Duchesses, speaking of Duchesses, so he's got that thing cornered over there. And Alex and Alan are combining, they're running the shop now. I just do paperwork and stand here and make an idiot of myself. So these two guys right here are really in charge, and they're the ones doing everything. So if anybody has any questions and they want to ask anything or get anything out that you always wanted to say, like I just did, feel free to do so, and we'll answer the questions as good as we can.
I'm glad you mentioned the door locks. I mean, I don't care whether it's a Piper or a Cessna or anything. The mechanism of the airplane doors are crap. They're just awful.
Mm-hmm.
And they break all the time. I mean, what's the, you mentioned, hey, let's take it easy on them. But what can we do to make them work longer than 10 minutes?
Well, the best thing to do is to come by the shop, and we've got probably half a dozen airplanes in there right now. Any of these guys, go around, you can open and close all the doors on them and get good at it. And when the students come in, if they get good at it to begin, it's really the only way, because the doors are the doors. And some of the parts aren't even available anymore. We have to make some of the parts or find them online, and people are beginning to know that. Dave Gordon just overdid a seat the other day. One of the seats, it had some broken parts on it, and he spent $2,000 or $3,000 on serviceable seat parts that we couldn't get. So that's terrible. Those parts shouldn't cost that much. So the way I would answer your question is practice it, get good at it, and learn how to finesse the door in and out. There is no magic to it. It's just an old piece of machinery. Imagine if we were teaching people, I always like to use the analogy, we're going to start a driving school, and we're going to get a fleet of 1979 Chevy Novas, right? And we're gonna bring kids in that have never driven before, and we'll maintain these cars. Well, that wouldn't last 5 minutes, and that's kind of what we're doing, because a Cessna and a Piper, they're kind of like Chevys and Fords. I mean, they're not Bonanzas or anything like that. So I wish I had a better answer. You just have to practice it. But the door's open. Yes, sir.
Where exactly were you located?
We're right in the middle of the airport at Crown Air.
Okay.
There's a parking lot across the street from Casa Machado. It's the only parking lot across the street from Casa Machado. It's a beautifully paved, new, really nice, expensive paving stone thing that they put in. That is the back of our hangar. There's a door there. It's always open.
If you just pass the Casa Machado, the county building, and you turn left in the first parking lot, you can actually walk in. It's the same gate code. You walk into that gate code, and it's right there. Yep, same gate code.
Yeah, well, we prop a door open in the corner all the time when we're open, and you're welcome to come in and out of it. It's where a lot of people come and check out the books, and all the instructors know where it's at and everything.
Brian, question in the back there.
Who?
Brian in the back.
Brian? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so we're kind of at the leading edge of it, but we're clearly transitioning to unleaded fuel in aviation. 2 airports in California just announced starting January 1st. They're not going to have 100 low lead anymore. We live in a blue hellscape, so more of them will fall down real quick. What do you guys think about the unleaded fuel? Is there anything we should do operating the airplanes differently with the unleaded fuel in the old high blow-by engines? How are we going to manage that transition? You know, somebody takes a 172 up there, there's no 100 low lead, they put unleaded gas in there.
Yep.
Thoughts on all that?
I think you may know more about that than I do. I've heard that, but I have no idea how it's going to go. Over the years, I've been doing this a while, and over the years we've heard, oh yeah, they're going to shut down GA, and they won't be selling the oil anymore, and we won't have the fuel anymore. I hope this is another one of those cycles. I have no idea, but I've just heard what you've heard.
So the question for everybody online was the 100 low lead that is existing and the unleaded fuel that's going into the airports. Some of that, Brian, I can answer, and Dave and I are following this really closely because there are some high compression engines where it is illegal to put unleaded fuel in there. We have some of those engines. Okay, so if Reed Hillview and what was the other one? Yeah,
San Carlos.
They're all up in the Bay Area, of course they are. So what's going to happen, we have no idea, and we're following it as close as we can, and as soon as we can put guidance out and what that looks like. But I mean, as far as how to do it, but I think it's worth putting out some kind of a notice that don't put unleaded fuel in there yet.
There's a good article in the Elpis magazine last month, I think it is, not the current one, that talks about there's 94 UL, which the bad side of that is you can't 100 million. There's another fuel that is developed in Texas, and again, I think that it's Gambi fuel they call it, but I think it's now also referred to as 100 UL. That's not out yet, available in wide use. They've only STC'd like one engine, but they're working on getting the other engine to STC, but it's supposed to be moving along. That sounds real promising because it is compatible with 100 low lead. The only downside of that one in this article is that it's about 10% heavier than for the same volume, which might mess up the weight balance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily, I don't really care one way or the other. I don't have a problem with unleaded, but just with a lot of things in California, it's ready, fire, aim. So, you know, what happens, I don't know. We'll keep on it. We'll let everybody know. And God forbid, they've been talking about it at Montgomery. God forbid that happens. That's going to be a big problem.
Well, one of the things also to keep in mind with stuff like this is that the cost relative to, they're going to have to build storage units, container units, and there's going to be some, of course, special handling of the facilities. And who in the state of California right now would think it'd be a great idea, hey, let's build a gas station in California. I'm sure they'd be just running out there to give you a permit. The fact that it's unleaded, who cares? It's a petroleum-based product. That's, as far as California is concerned, is the evil monster, so you're not even going to get it to begin with. So I don't know who'd be willing to implement the price and the cost of the permits and the changeover and everything associated with it to get the unleaded gas in there. Is it coming? Yeah. So are electric cars. I mean, it's all given. The electric cars are coming. So, yeah, Rich?
Yeah, I just wrote on the State Job Training website, just wrote a newsletter for all our pilots. So the fuel, was working for the fuel engineers and some folks from Germany. So trying to keep my cold away from the way. So the 94 UL does work, and we're putting it in by tanker trucks. So we'll do a lot of rail cars. So there'll be a fair amount of it starting to get spread in California. To use it in an aircraft engine, you have to buy the Swiss FCC, which is only $100, and it gives you placards and the right to be able to use it. It works fine on low compression engines, lower horsepower. The 100 UL, Textron has now approved it in all of their engines except the Continental, the large Continental. So you can't do it in the Columbia, to give you an example. You couldn't use it in the Cirrus right now. So when the 100, right now, the current 100 unleaded will work in the Metro 206, will work in all in one. So you have 94 and you have the 100. So the issue I think that one of the reasons I sent it out to the ASO flight pilot is just now we just have to make sure we read not only the NOTAMs but verify fuel. So even if you have a plane that is compatible with 94 UL, if you don't have the FCC and you don't have the placards on your plane, you're not allowed to use it. So that's the thing that you want to let the members know, that they have to, they have to check some airports right now. There's two, there's maybe Watsonville coming up and a couple other ones I heard. Of just that if they go to those destinations, they have to not only check their usual NOTAMs, but just verify that 100 low lead is available, unless an owner decides that they want to make their plane to FCC. I talked about the folks with 100 unleaded. Great idea. I mean, it'd be awesome for our engine if they get that all technology installed. But it's limited availability. But you will see more of the 94 UL. And most likely you'll see it in Montgomery because there's already the center source for UL.
So bottom line of the club is we're not putting any unleaded fuel in any club airplanes
6.35
as of right now.
So you've got to be just careful about that.
It seems to be at the front end of this. Maybe this will make it easy to track the club members. Have something on there. We've got 2 airports in California right now that we know we're transitioning to. And if we start that list now while it's simple to put together,
Sure.
it might discourage people from flying to those airports if they know they can't get gas.
Absolutely. Yep.
Instead of waiting until it becomes a big deal and we take a lot of footwork to put together.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll try to figure out how to make that notification. So that's assuming that people actually read the messages that are online. That's a whole other problem that we have, but we will do our best to get the information out there at least so that it's out there. And just one other thing, just to piggyback off of what Dave said, because he mentioned a dollar amount, right? $2,000 for a seat. So Dave has every right, Dave Gordon that is, would have every right to submit that as an IDP claim to the club. That's your money, okay? So that, those claims that come into the club, that get paid by the club under the IDP, that is your money that is being paid out for these issues that we're having. Now, it's not always the case, some of it's maintenance, but a lot of it is your money. There's a question in the back.
I guess this is more for Dave.
Just repeat the question.
If you put unleaded in a well that didn't do that, what happens?
Which Dave? There's a few of us up here.
Well, once again, that question, the answer to that's over my head. I'm not an engineer when it comes to fuel burn and which one is higher octane and lower octane. I have no idea. I know the higher octane stuff burns cooler than the lower octane stuff, but I couldn't answer the question. Honestly, I have to say I don't know, because I would do more damage guessing at it than knowing I don't know.
Yeah, it's still early in the game, I think, to talk about. We know, like I said, it's coming. But it's not. I don't think it's going to be tomorrow that it's going to be here. It's going to gradually be coming, and I think as time goes, a lot more information will be coming out, and we'll get more understanding of UL once we get a year or two under our belts and starts to kind of make traction. It's going to take some time. So I don't think, like you said, you're going to fly into Paso Robles tomorrow and no gas. Well, we're screwed. So just like Shane said, start reading the NOTAMs. That's the big thing.
Anybody have any more nut and bolt questions?
Why are some threads left and some right? Anyway. We got a cool piece of equipment up here. So
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
yeah, it looks like a charcuterie tray.
Can everyone hear me? You can never hear me, Brent. I have a +1 question. What is the policy for locking the doors? Do we lock the doors? Do we not lock the doors? We have to lock the doors? Every time we leave the plane, we have to lock the doors? Okay. If they work, because I do know that some don't work. I would say 85, 90% of the time I go to reach for a door, it's never locked. And for the most part, it's not my problem. It's not my plane, and it doesn't bother me. When it does bother me is when the aircraft has a door steward installed. So the door steward is a pneumatic ram, if you will. It's under pressure. If we ever have one off, come and push it down. It takes all of your force to push it down. And these locks, the actual latch itself barely engages with the door. So with this door steward, it gradually will push it open. And many times we've seen aircraft with the door open. So particularly if it has a door steward and the lock is not working or you can't get it to lock, give us a call and we can lock it. And that kind of leads into my next segue, which is the other day it was raining and a door came open on one of our aircrafts that we maintain, and it got a bunch of water inside of it. And we've had to deal with water in the past. We had a Cirrus that had these windows that were blown out, the seals, and a bunch of water came into the cabin, and they left it outside in the sun, and when someone came and opened it up, 3 months later, black mold everywhere, just awful, right? So the sooner we can address that problem, the less likely that it's going to sit on the ramp for 2, 3, 4 days, get a bunch of mold, and be a hazardous issue. That being said, if water does enter into the fuselage, there's supposed to be drains where this water drains out, if that's ever the case. Sometimes, people drop their pens down there. Gunk, dirt, oil clogs those drains. So if you get to your plane and you see water dripping out of the bottom, maybe you have 20 or 30 pounds of water in your fuselage or in your tail. That's happened before to people. So again, it's San Diego. It only rains 1 day out of the year. Not a big problem, but something I noticed. The last thing, this rudder is damaged, and I'll give you a guess who damaged it. I did. And what I want to say with this is don't try to be a hero. I encourage everyone to pick this up and feel how thin it is. Like David said, it's tinfoil. And if you're moving a plane or you're moving a multi and it's heavy and you can't do it and you're I mean, for the most part, I think by the ramps, you're good. I'd never have seen any fuselage or rudder or any damage by the ramps. But for a hangar, yeah, we see hangar rash all the time. And, you know, sometimes you just get in a hurry, you want to move it, someone's blocking the way. Don't just put all that aside, grab someone and have them be some eyes, have them spot you. These are not cheap and they're not particularly fun to put in. So do yourself a favor, don't try to be a hero, just ask someone for help and try to put it away as safely as possible.
What's a skin on that thing cost now?
Well, it's actually extremely difficult to reskin this, so we purchased the whole rudder.
At the cost of?
The rudder itself is about $4,500, $5,000, and then when you get paint on and labor to put it on, bend a rudder, it's about $6 or $7 grand.
There you go, guys. That's IDP money.
Yes? That's fine. No, that's okay. That's fine. I was trying to be a hero. So it was in our hangar, and I was pulling out the plane, and I wanted to swing the tail so that way the wingtip would clear another plane. And I was pulling out by myself. I didn't have any eyes, and I wanted to get this thing out because it was going to go for a flight, and I want to get it going, and I want to be snappy. And by cutting it, I swung it into a nav light on the wingtip of another plane. So if you feel around here, you can see where it dragged, because I'm pulling, I'm like, man, it's got resistance. Brakes are dragging, yeah. Someone set the parking brake. So anyways, that's how that happened. No, not a club plane. It's hiding in a hangar, and you guys will never know.
That was the one over there.
Yeah, that was it. But I encourage everyone to pick this up and just feel how light grade that is. It's an aircraft. It's extremely light, but it's also extremely strong. Not in the area I hit it, of course. Yes?
So similarly, 75 Foxtrot about 2 or 3 years ago had damaged the rudder. Somebody pushed it back into something, a little crease along the trailing edge. And then just about a year ago, we got that reskinned at $6,000 or so. And then about a year ago, CFI and his student, rated student, were pushing 75 Foxtrot back into his tie down. And there's not normally a plane parked behind it, but somebody temporarily parked a plane right behind it. And they pushed this 75 Foxtrot, and the rudder went right between the flaps and the aileron on the other 172. Put a crease in exactly the same spot. So I had to order another rudder, and like I said, you can send the old rudder back and get it reskinned. Or these places that do the reskinning, they'll just sell you one, they swap it. So we went through that whole process twice in a matter of 2 years. And it's $6,000 or $7,000 a shot.
Was there a question? Yes, sir.
You can hear me.
Yes.
Usually loud. So I was taught with doing the pre-flight to look at the surfaces or control surfaces for corrosion, and it kind of looks like a spider web underneath paint. But I'm really looking for like where the paint is coming off. But what would you as an AMP look at when you're looking at corrosion, where it really becomes a safety of flight issue?
Yeah, well,
Where really you are saying, hey, get this replaced and fixed, like immediately.
I'm just going to repeat the question.
okay.
Yeah, just so to repeat the question for the guys online. The question is, what do you do in a pre-flight from their standpoint when you're looking for corrosion?
There's many different types of corrosion, some more severe and some superficial, where we can address it with some sandpaper and some paint. The corrosion that I would see on a skin that starts to really concern me is if you can physically move the skin. So if you can push it with your finger and you start to feel that give where it's going to go through, sure. If it's chalky and flaky, you scratch it with your fingernail, and that it's just kind of a superficial thing. Not majorly concerning. We can address that pretty quickly. We've seen some where it's all over the entire top of the wing, and you get to a rivet head, and you bit your fingernail under a rivet head, and you can start popping rivet heads off. That is concerning. And that is the same kind of corrosion that's on a skin. It's just on a different place. Again, there's many different types of corrosion, but I would say the main thing is if you can touch it, and if it's surface skin, if it's skin corrosion and you can touch it and you can push your finger on it and it starts to give significantly where it feels like it's going to punch through, that's when I would start to raise a red flag.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Does that sound good? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, there we go. On the 172s, I've seen people add oil at 4 quarts. Some people add oil with 6 quarts. Some people add oil until it overflows. What do you guys recommend?
Alan?
There's a sweet spot on all of the small engines. And when I say small, I mean even the big ones in a Cirrus. That's a small engine, small aircraft engine. It's really hard to say exactly where that spot is, but if you start with the engine 1 quart low, I hate saying this because it's just ridiculous to throw a number out there like that, but a rule of thumb, 1 quart low, you're probably in near the sweet spot. 172 with an upgraded engine, D2J or whatever, has a 7 or an 8 quart system. The 7 quart systems like to run right between 6 and 7. And the 8 quart systems like to run right in the same zone, but never over 7, right in the 6 zone. So anywhere from 1 quart low to 1.5 quarts low seems to be generic. If I have to answer the question in a blanket, that's where I would do it. But every engine is different. Some of them will have a sweet spot that's really low, and you can find this by just running the engine and let it find its spot. And there is a spot there where it'll just hang. So if you've got a 6 quart system, it might go down to 4.5, and it'd be perfectly comfortable there. But you almost have to own the airplane to do that. In the club environment, you're not going to find that. So, but filling it up all the way, not the greatest idea. 1 quart always goes right out the bottom. And this is my flea-bitten opinion. It is not regulatory. So there you go.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
I think one of them is a suggestion and the other is a question. So since it's not possible for us renters to know how much oil to put in the engine, would it be possible to, like, say, put a sticker on every airplane in the service system, like right where that places to fill the oil? Like, what's the recommended, like, say, 7 for our service?
Yes, if you're flying an airplane that doesn't have that information readily available to you, call the owner, call us, call someone. It's supposed to be there.
It should be in the book. Yeah, in the. I mean, it's definitely in the POH, but it should be in the book too, in
No.
the very front cover of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, Cessna, when they came, there was a sticker inside the oil door that says, yeah, they are missing. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. I don't think they're regular. I don't think they have to be on there, and they cost like $200 for the sticker. Yeah, for the sticker. Yeah, and don't get me started on what things cost, but that's just one small example. That little sticker that goes under there that says you built to 7 quarts or whatever it says with this type of oil, it's a $225, $230 right now. You can make them yourself and they're legal. You can use felt pin. But the oil cap has a number on it. The cap that you pull out with the little finger thing on it, that should have a number stamped in it. There's graduated lines on the stick itself. That should have it. And then, of course, in the POH. Be careful with the POH. Some people put bigger engines and different engines in their airplanes and don't update the POH, or the POH comes from another airplane. Be careful with that.
Hey, Dave, I think what he may be referring to is the sticker that indicates what the sweet spot is versus POH, because on the Cherokee.
We can't do that. We can't do that.
I think that's what he meant.
Yeah.
The owners can do that.
Yeah.
The owners can do that.
Yeah, we can't do that regulatory-wise. Yeah, I've got to say flea bitten in front of everything that I say, and that's how that works. Yes. Yes, sir.
So, as you said, on the dipstick is the maximum capacity, and in general, and it's hard to, 1 quart below that maximum number on the dipstick is probably a good rule of thumb.
Yep.
Those that have the information sheets, all mine have the information sheet in there, it gives you the range. 172N models were built with an H280 engine and 4-6 ports. A lot of them, all of mine were converted to 2J, which is 5 to 7. The 180 horses is 6 to 8. So those numbers have changed. But those numbers, the range is on the information sheet in the airplane if the information sheet's there.
Yeah, and you can call somebody. You can call me, I'll tell you. You can call these guys, they'll tell you.
I'll see about putting
Yeah.
sending up my dyno label maker to stick on the roll door.
Yeah, we're always available to answer the questions. Yes, yes, sir.
What's your phone number?
Is it on the website?
It's on, yeah, it's on any airplane that
Yeah,
has
well,
aeromechanics. It's,
Where does he find it on the website?
Yeah, any airplane that has aeromechanics so basically, I'll give you a couple: 4975 Foxtrot, 4922 Delta, 3386 Echo. Pick any of those. Right in the middle, it'll have the shop, and his name is the one that, or his number is the one that's there. Hang
And
on
you
one
can see
second.
me on the way out. I didn't bring business cards. I don't solicit. I'm terrible at that. So, but I'd be happy to give it to you.
Bob Agresto in the back, and then
By the way, you guys do a tremendous job. Really happy to have you work on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Thank you. I sit at the desk now and type on and do stupid stuff. These guys are doing it right here. These guys and 3 other ones.
In there, they'll get the books for you. You've got time to look them over, make sure everything's
Yeah.
But my question is this: we talked about the oil on the fuel. It seems like when the fuel guy comes out there, if he fills it all the way to the top, some of these airplanes start leaking the fuel out. So should it? I don't know what is happening, but anyway, should we always tell that fuel person only 1 inch from the top?
When you say leaking the fuel out, from where?
You know where you check the fuel on the wing, on the import side of the wing, right around that.
That's a leaky fuel tank and should be reported. If it goes out of the vent, there's a check valve there that's kind of supposed to, but once again, airplanes are 45 years old. So sometimes it'll start peeing out of the fuel vent when the sun hits it.
Again, inside that fuel tank.
Say it again?
Is it a bladder tank?
No, it looks just like what you see in your mind when you think of a car fuel tank. It's a big aluminum square thing with a couple lines in it for reinforcement.
It should not be dripping like that.
It shouldn't be, no.
there was another question right here.
I was gonna say, and if there's a bluish tint color around the sump, then yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Why?
the sumps seep on a regular basis. The little valves don't cost very much, and you can call us or call the owner. A lot of times we can take an air hose and blow it up in there and blow pieces, their lint gets in there, around the O-ring that the little spring pushes down on. And we can blow that stuff up in there, and then it'll take a while, and it'll come back, or the engine will eat it, one or the other, if it's a small piece of lint. You know, but if it continues to seep like that, it just takes us a little while. We come out and, you know, like putting your finger in the dike, we pull it out and put a new valve in there. We keep them on the shelf. The guys can do them on the ramp just like that. So yeah, you're right. Perfect.
So my actual question, it's kind of a slight engine avionics. So with the fuel on the, I think it's the Garmin 275 engine monitor, I was out flying and noticed that the fuel indication on it wasn't even accurate. Because, you know, I was full tanks, landed it, checked it manually, and it was still reading 25 on each tank, and it was, you know, the dead stick was showing 18, 19, something like that. So I did the math, and it just wasn't reading. So I was trying to understand if it's just an inaccuracy for the sensors, or maybe it was a calibration.
Does the 275 have to have, excuse me, does the 275 have to have digital?
That's GI 275 Garmin
Yeah.
display. So, right, so sometimes you need a CIES fuel sender, which is a digital sender. So it depends on the installation. They need to be calibrated. So during the install, you need to calibrate them every 5 gallons or every 2 gallons, depending on the install. But I want to say maybe it wasn't calibrated correctly.
Do they ever go, how over time do they?
They're not supposed to. So the old technology is a resistor. The new technology is a frequency type capacitive sensor, which is digital, is super accurate. And I want to say you don't have to do it ever. It's just you put it in and it knows the frequency maybe in 10 years, I want to say. So if you saw that, is probably out of calibration, or when it was installed, it wasn't installed correctly. And so maybe it just needs to get redone.
Which airplane was it? No. Tell me afterwards. Well, I mean, there's not that many that have GI-275, so.
It's hard for us to fix when they don't tell us.
Well,
Makes it a little more difficult.
that is another issue.
Well, and the other thing is, sorry, that I want to add to that is it won't read right on the ground because you calibrate them as if they were flying up in the air. So if you came on the ground and you read something, then it will, because they're supposed to read right when they're flying at level attitude. So that's another factor to take into account, which I forgot to mention. Because, a Cessna will sit like this on the ground, and when it's flying, it sits, like that somewhat. So that's another factor that we have to take into account. Always look at it when you're flying. You sit on the ground and you're like, oh, I'm 5 gallons off. You will be. Because the attitude of the plane will be different.
Yes? Why do you keep asking questions? Okay, go ahead.
On the GI-275s, they have to have, what Army requires these CIS senders that Alan was talking about. And if they're calibrated right, they should work. Also, on the EDMs, like I have in my 172s, the JPI, they work fine with the old Cessna, they call them the toilet tank floats. The only problem with those is they do bounce around when you get turbulence. So but both the EDMs and the GI-275 have a fuel total alternator. And that is the most accurate thing you can rely on. Those things are within a gallon after a couple, 3 hours of use. They measure, as long as you enter before you take off, what your fuel tank levels were, if you have dipstick, if they're full, put that number into those instruments when you leave. And when you get there, you can check, and you'll be literally within a gallon, maybe 2. So just pay real close attention to that fuel used, fuel remaining that comes in on that instrument. It's completely separate from fuel gauges. Use both. Be conservative, but just be aware that the fuel remaining should be very accurate.
More questions for these gentlemen? So while you're thinking of questions, just to point out how available they are, almost 2 years ago when we had the safety panel that got shut down. It was almost 2 years ago. I was trying to fly back here. I was out at the river. This was when the lake wasn't at the bottom of the Lake Isabella. So 2 years ago, yeah. So we were getting ready to fly back, had plenty of time, took off out of the water, put the gear down. The gear would not come down. It came down a little bit, so luckily I was able to get the gear back up. There was 2 of us. We landed back on the river, uneventful. So one of us was keeping the airplane from hitting anything. The other one, that would be me, was on top of the bow, looking in the gear area with one phone in the hand, talking to David, and it was like it was probably in the middle of the afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock, and he's trying to tell me what to look for. Right, so he's trying to point out these things, and he's having me look through a bunch of stuff. And then at some point in time, he said, "You're screwed." So we somehow he actually was able to point me in the right direction. We got the gear down. It was broken. We were able to taxi up onto the beach difficultly. And the next day, Alan's in a plane going out to fix it, and he spent the next 3 days out there in the dirt on the side of the Colorado River fixing an airplane, right? So that's a testimony to what these guys do it certainly wasn't for me, but it was definitely for the fact that, they just love airplanes and the club, and they'll definitely help you out. So you got to call these guys, and that's what they're there for. And
I called you from Texas. You didn't come to Texas. What part of Texas were you in?
Fair point.
I have a question, actually. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you see a non-maintenance professional airplane person doing that's stupid? So kind of Shane asked at the beginning, what are some kind of things that you witness people doing that they shouldn't be doing? For example, I'll get in with a new student, not my own, that will never lean the mixture while on the ground. Or somebody that when they run it up, they have an excessive make drop and they're doing it at full rich and aren't actually the best power. Things like that you notice regularly from a maintenance perspective that maybe some of us as mere pilots aren't realizing.
This kind of goes into flight training, which is your department, okay? But some of the things that you guys do reflect back, like it ends up in the shop, right? Because it's not being operated correctly out there. You mentioned mixture, and please come to the shop so we can talk about this in length, and I'll be brief. There's 100 rules of thumb. Start the engine, pull it back 1 inch. Start the engine, pull it back 1.5 inches. Start the engine, pull it back a thumb or a finger. I have no idea what all that means. You have to feel it. If it's a carbureted engine, Dave was just talking about nobody knows how to do carburetors. I don't think anybody does. We study it, we're pretty good at it, but I don't know if there's a person on the planet that's really great at carburetors. You've got to pull that mixture back until the engine starts to die. Then you got to go forward ever so slowly until you get a sweet spot. That's where you leave it. Leave it almost to where it's choking a little bit. That is the best way to taxi the airplane out. The engine loves that. Not to worry. If you pull out, I did this on a check ride. If you pull out on the runway and forget to put the mixture in, you will be reminded that it is not in, okay? So you won't forget it. It's not something you're going to forget. Now, if you didn't do it correctly and you just, I'm going to pull it back 1 inch and you go to take off, you could be in trouble because you could get going and the thing could start doing weird stuff. Practice it. If you practice it and show your students how to do that, that's the best thing. Another thing, once again, flight training, please understand these are my personal opinions. They have nothing to do with teaching people to fly other than me talking to you guys. If you can show people how to play a game with themselves and try and taxi all the way to the run-up without touching the brakes, that is an awesome technique. And
I was going to touch that.
yeah, and you know, the guys that have warbirds, they got a 16-foot propeller going around up there, right? And that thing's going, they do it. Because you're not going to survive if you don't do it. You won't have brakes when you land because the brakes on some of those airplanes suck. And by the time, especially if you're headed downwind, which you are, to get to the run-up, right? There's always wind behind you if you're going to the right runway. So it's a talent that I think people, if you play a game and teach it as a game, they get good at it. And it also makes them smooth. Should they go for a commercial someday, they'll have that under their belt. That's just a couple of the things. We could go on forever on that. And like I said, the shop's open, come over. All these guys fly. So everybody knows they fly better than I do. They do the job better than I do. I'm just a mouthpiece. So come over and get more of it. But those are just a couple. Is that okay, or you good?
Dave, do you want to make the announcement about tires?
Well, like I was talking about the fuel, hopefully it's an alarm set off unnecessarily, but we've got tires on order. We have tires on order. Correct my English. And we're getting confirmation from our tire suppliers, which we have 2 or 3 of, for 600 tires, which are the common tire on the main gear of most of the airplanes you guys are flying, that we won't get them until February. Some of them are March. And when we see things like that, we literally could stop this thing we have because those tires are the main thing you guys are rolling on. So we have about 10 of them in stock right now. We usually don't in stock that many, but the maintenance business is cyclical. We may go a month and not put a tire on, and then we'll go a week and put a dozen tires on. So If everything goes okay, we'll be all right. Right now, we can't get 1550 oil. I borrowed it from Dave Ito today. He's borrowing tires from us. We're running around the airport, borrowing everything from everybody. At some point, we might have a problem. And I had you guys put that up just to, this is a great time to practice that taxiing with no brakes.
We got some spare tires. Go on eBay. I saw one old Air Trainer, Aerohawk, $500. It was the whole wheel was $295, and it was a worn out tire.
Yeah, well.
Dry rotted too.
Yeah. So hopefully that doesn't become an issue. Yes, sir.
More often I see the rivets on the cowling, some of them are loose and sometimes they're missing. What should I be concerned?
They're all supposed to be in there, okay? And I have to say that.
Because when they are loose, they make this distinct noise
Yeah.
that you can hear through your headphones sometimes.
Yeah. Those fasteners are a pain in the ass if they're the original one. Are you talking about a Cessna?
Yeah.
Okay. The original ones that came on a Cessna, they're called the Southco, and they're very fragile. They have to be adjusted just right. The little tangs on the back bend. Nobody expected the airplanes to last this long. So some of the people that we maintain their airplanes are bold enough to spend the money to put the newer style, okay, fasteners on, which we buy kits to put them on, and you'll probably seen them. They're about the size of a dime, and they have a Phillips head in the center of them. Those are a much higher quality, and they're adjustable. So those are what you see on newer model airplanes. It's about $2,000 and another $500, $600, $700 for labor just to put those fasteners in. I know it, once again, it's one of those things where you say, well, why doesn't that cheapskate owner put the fasteners that this guy has? That if you're an owner, like I was talking about perspective earlier, look at it from the owner's perspective. Geez, I keep putting money into this airplane, and people keep breaking it, and on and so forth. So as they get to it, you'll probably see them. But in your particular case, if you're off somewhere and you're missing one, fly it back. Okay, once again, my opinion, let us know when you get back. If you're leaving and you're going somewhere from the airport, from here, let somebody know. We can come out there, pop something in there, and off you go. Yes, sir.
Maybe you could share a little bit of knowledge you have on the Surefire electronic magnetos.
Very little.
Why aren't we replacing those more broadly through the fleet? Because mags are going pretty regularly.
Yes.
Just the base of the question so everybody else can hear, because they're all saying that they can't get a question.
Who's saying that?
Online.
Online.
Well, they're not here. What do I care? What are they coming?
So
Are they going to come and bitch or
I'll
what?
repeat. The question is why
Once
we're not
again-
using Surefire electronic mags. Surefly, thank you, on most of the fleet.
Okay. Once again, I'll be as brief as possible. The magneto situation is terrible. The new magnetos are up to $1,500 or $1,700 now. Not the dual mag, but the single mags that you have two of on the back of most of the engines that are out there. They are complete junk, okay? They were great for a John Deere tractor in 1950 or 45 or even before that, and they're probably still good on that. But Bendix mags were on those tractors, and they're really nice. But these are slick mags. They are crap. We have to use those. We have to use one of those. You put the Surefly on one side, you still have to have one of those slick mags on the other side. So at 500 hours, it starts to go to crap. Actually, it starts to go to crap right away because it has contact points in it.
We want them to fly, David.
So these mags, when you put those on there, with the contact points and the little cams on them, this mag does not talk to this mag, as you know. If you lose one, the other one takes over. They don't talk to each other at all. The one does not know that the other one's there. Not intuitive in any way. The moment you start the engine, they start deviating with each other. And if you go on a mag check, you'll notice sometimes you go onto one mag and you get a 50 RPM drop, and the other one you get an 80 RPM drop. That's because they're not timed the same. And they're going to get worse and worse as they go. It's almost impossible to keep them that way. We see airplanes every 50 hours. We check the timing. It's part of our service interval to try and keep those the same because it's good for fuel and everything. The reason they're not on there is it's like $3 or $4 grand, once again, they throw at it, and it's only one side. everybody in the business is scared that at some point, and there's people working on it right now, the Skytech guy that used to own Skytech starters and those new alternators that are out there, those plain power alternators, they are working on full-blown legal ignition systems with battery backup, kind of like a G5, right, in the panel. If that comes out, we will happily be throwing these magnetos in the trash. But back to your question, the reason is it's cost prohibitive and the technology is rapidly advancing. So there's some fear about putting SureFly on there, spending the $4,000 or $5,000 to put it on there, still having that crummy magneto next to it, and then soon the magnetos will come out fully electronic with advance and everything, really nice. If you've ever been in an RV-10 or something like that, that they are legal, they have a full electronic system on them, the Edge 540 and those, the aerobatic airplanes, they have a full electronic, and the engines run so smooth it's pathetic. But it's cost prohibitive and it's a risk to put it on right now. We would love to do it, and we will put them on all day long, and they do help. But having that other mag on there, we've got to kind of get the crummy one to operate like the good one, and it's really hard to keep them.
So you're not really saving on the maintenance or the replacement cost?
You are, but it takes a while. It would take about almost an engine overhaul to do that. However, the fuel burn is an improvement. So it is worth it, but it's almost a push. It's almost an even Steven. If you stuck with the two and you had them overhauled every 500 hours, right? You do 4 overhauls during the thing and then the price of the magneto, if you get where I'm coming from. But it does make the engine run better. But that's why we're not doing it. It's cost prohibitive at the moment. But I like it. I would do it if I had the money to do it on my airplanes, I would do it in a second. So, just depends. Yes, sir.
So I had something else I was going to talk about, but I'll answer your question. I did do the SureFly electronic mag on one of my 172s. I won't tell you which one yet. But right after I put it on, we had a problem where I was flying it back from Ramona at night, and about every 2 minutes the engine goes and stumbled. Got it back. David put it in the shop. That was on Friday night. Saturday, spent all day Saturday working on it. Couldn't find the problem. Ran it up. It worked perfectly. Sunday morning, a member took it out, did a FOS transition, and over Miramar, he declared an emergency because it was having that little stumbling thing. Brought it back. I called SureFly on Monday morning, and they said, oh, yeah, that's a known problem. Our lightning arrestor is too sensitive. We have a kit. We'll send it to you. They sent me the kit. Brent installed it. Oh, they said, it'll take you 20 minutes to install the kit. How many hours did it take, Brent? About 4 hours. So, and so I put off doing this on my other airplanes till they kind of perfect it. I talked to them again at Oshkosh. Oh, yeah, we haven't got that totally out yet without doing the kit. So the technology is slow to coming for certified engines, which all of our club airplanes are. I do have an RV that's got dual electronic mags and a backup battery. It is the smoothest running engine. It's like a rocket ship, but that's not available for us.
I see people yawning. I want to stop.
One last thing I want to say.
Wrap it up.
I know. I just want to say because
Comment. Is it a question or a comment?
it's a comment because
Okay.
I want to pay
Let's take
tribute.
questions first, Dave, because you've had like 6 comments. Are there any other questions?
I want to pay
Hang on,
tribute to
Dave,
these
hang
guys
on.
up here.
Are there any other questions before we let these guys go?
Do you guys want some heads up before students come over and talk to you, or just?
You can do that if you want, but you can come over. The guys are working in the shop. They're willing to help, and you can just walk on in.
You're a mechanic, can you get the zap out of that microphone?
It's the one back there. It's the one you gave up.
It's the people at home that are causing it. They're doing something, some voodoo crap.
I don't even have my thing on.
Okay, hang on a second. Brent wanted to say something.
Okay, just a couple of comments. On your question about what you can do or what owners are doing that leads to problems, I would say know the airplanes and read the checklist. An example is that once in a while get a call that the stall warning is not working in a Piper Warrior. And I'll bring in the shop and check it, and it's working just fine. The thing is, the later Pipers, of course, have got the oral warning like the Cessnas do. The earlier ones have got a red light on the panel, and it says stall. And people get in there, and they flick the little switch out in the wing, and they don't hear the horn going off. Again, it's know the airplane, know the checklist. Well, Dave's got his Duchess, and it's a nice one. It's the nicest one I've ever seen. And it has what's called an air pressure switch in the landing gear system, which the airplane has to be going so fast, about 58 to 62 knots, before power will be allowed to go to the motor to raise the gear. So the thing is, if the gear selector's in the up position, and you're going down the runway and you hit 62 knots or so, the gear is going to start going up. The problem is the airplane doesn't lift off at 62 knots. It lifts off at a higher airspeed. Again, the checklist before you take off. Look at that gear. It says right there, gear selector down. There's a little stuff like that would solve a lot of the problems. A couple other things on, we're talking oil. My rule of thumb is I like to have it within half a quart of max capacity. So when we do oil changes and it's 8 quarts, we'll put quarts, oil filter, we put a new oil filter on, and they'll suck up half a quart right there. Because I find, in my experiences, anything beyond that is just going to get blown out the breather tube. However, if you get the plane, it's an 8-quart capacity, and it's at 7 quarts, don't say, well, I'll throw a half quart in there and I'll put the remaining oil in the back of the plane, because it's going to leak, guaranteed. Wait till you absolutely have to use a full bottle of oil and then put a quart in. So let it go down to 6.5. It's not going to hurt anything. So.
In the
And
back.
Yep, so do you guys, I don't know if your insurance allows it, but are owner-assisted annuals or possibly even student-assisted annuals? I'll take that. Can we send a student to you to clean the spark plugs after they get fouled?
Yeah, what do you do for a living?
I write software.
Can I come over and?
Could you please?
No, we don't do it.
Can they watch you guys work though? Like shadow you?
Sure. They can come over and hang out and ask questions while we're doing it. Okay. But to hang out for the entire inspection, they're going to be there 3 days, 2 or 3 days. No, but like people can come over and hang out in the shop. I just made the offer, and I mean it, because we want to educate people. We love airplanes. We want you to love them too. But as far as owner-assisted stuff, that is a huge red flag to the insurance company and to us. It actually takes a lot out of us, because we're constantly talking and teaching while we're doing it. And that's cool if that's the mode we're in, but to do it for a whole inspection, oh my God, it would be crazy. And then we would learn something, and we don't want to do that. Anybody else? Too many yawning. We got to stop.
I just want to say a comment. I was learning recently to get my private, and I came over, and you guys were so generous with your time and helped me understand more about the engine and all of the components of the airplane. And the books were so perfect that it made my check ride so much easier. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, that's what we live for. We love airplanes. We don't make a lot of money doing this. We do it because we love it. Yeah. You know, Alan just had a baby. He's got like a 3-week-old. So now he's, you know, we have to scrounge our money together to pay for Alan's the baby food.
Clarification, Alan's wife
no,
had a baby?
We
you
love
have
it.
to say that nowadays. Yeah, you have to say that nowadays. He might be.
All right, are we good? You again.
Okay. Last thing, I often get compliments on my airplanes, and when people tell me that, I tell them these guys are why my airplanes are in good shape. Alan, Alex, Brent, David, Todd, Hal, and Stephen and Mitchell, these guys do a fantastic job of taking care of not only my airplanes, but all the other airplanes that they work on. And please tell them thank you, because they're keeping your life much safer and much more comfortable.
Don't forget to mention your checkbook, because that makes the world go around. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. If you want credit online, or if you want credit here, or the people online, Rudder is the code to put in.
1D or 2?
Yeah. Nope, just Rudder. Next meeting is on the calendar. I think it's in February.
Sorry if I interrupted too much.
Oh,